we are. So, it's nice to meet you again. I'm a regular DrupalCon presenter, but this is the first time since my first Drupal talk at DrupalCon Barcelona 2007 that I'm just talking in front of a screen. I hope we will meet in person again as soon as possible, but for the moment, it is nice to meet you virtually. I'm Andrea, and I'm founder and currently Drupal and Data Advisor at Nuvole, Drupal company, and I also work at a university as an adjunct professor of web communication and web consultant at the University of Parma, Italy. And lately, in my DrupalCon talks, I've been focusing on Drupal from a data angle with the touch of data science. And this is the approach we are taking for the analysis of Drupal in universities we are just about to start right now. Just a few words about Nuvole, because our roots are actually in universities. We originated from ESN, that is an international student network. Our first big project was a Drupal 6, at the time, template for use in higher education institutes across Europe. And now we moved mostly to NGOs and public institutions. So we tend to run a few big projects for big institutions like the World Food Programme, the European Commission, OECD, World Bank. And we've been Drupal pioneers, and our work was especially with features and now with configuration management, core contributors, and frequent Drupal containers. And if you're interested in more, of course, our website is nuvole.org. Let's really start with what this session is about. So, Drupal in universities. The first part is dedicated to exploring the data. So, a comprehensive survey of how Drupal is used in universities in Europe today. Well, Drupal was born at a university in the end. We all know that Drupal was famously started by Dries in a dormitory room at the University of Antwerp. And here is a popular picture of Dries in his room where Drupal was born. So the first Drupal site was a university site, meaning that it existed within a university context. And this happened even before it was named Drupal, actually, since the Drupal name came later than that. Now it's 20 years later, fast forward, and we have this quote on Drupal.org, unsourced. You can find the link in the slides I shared with you. And it says that 71 out of the 100 top universities use Drupal. Now, this is the kind of quote that might be a little bit misleading, probably, since it probably includes usage on secondary or non-public websites. I mean, a university using Drupal for its internet would probably still qualify for these 71 universities using Drupal. And then what the 100 top universities are is, of course, another unclear statement. There should be a ranking of university rankings. There are so many university rankings that the top 100 universities can be really anything. But we did a quick heuristic check on the top 10 universities according to an established ranking, the popular QS ranking. And indeed, 4 of them are using Drupal for their main website. Drupal is the most used in this group of 10 universities as main CMS. So for sure, in this factoid of the 71% is can be put in question, but we know for sure that Drupal is well positioned in education, meaning that at least 4 of the top 10 universities use it as for their main website, and this is more than any other CMS. Let's talk about the process we use to get the real data. For this, you can call it a market analysis, even if our aim was more the analysis itself than the focus on the market. We've analyzed the current data from 1,800 European universities listed on the UniRank website, since apparently it is quite hard to find an official list with university names and links. Everything, as we will see, is much country-based this time still, and it's harder to find statistics across Europe. So we started with this directory of world universities. We scraped the page of each university profile, and we got the main website from there. This was actually better in terms of data quality than a sample we ran on the official university data for Italy, which are marked as outdated and indeed do contain lots of outdated websites that are no longer online and old university list. So this is the best source we could find. And then the second step was detecting the CMS in use for each website. Basically answering the question, is it Drupal or not Drupal? For non-Drupal, we stop the analysis there. We just report the CMS name the moment we can identify it is not Drupal. For possible Drupal, we try to determine the version, and in a bit smart way, looking at CSS files or other stuff that is different between Drupal versions, and that will still work even if one protects changelog.txt in all the versions of Drupal, or install.php in modern versions of Drupal. Install.php in Drupal 9, for example, reveals the Drupal version you are running, but it is not always available. And it is quite satisfactory because about only 30% of the sites remain undetected, but this is expected. I mean, it is unavoidable since universities do like homemade stuff, and many times they start with their own CMS, and this is by its very nature undetectable, or they prefer to do everything by hand, and this is still undetectable. Just a couple slides about methodology. Okay, this is my data scientist angle, since it's probably unnecessary, but let's clarify this before we see the results. So scoping. The analysis was run in late September, so basically last week. And we focused on higher education institution in general. This is called Drupal for universities, but it is very common now to put any higher education institution in the same statistics as universities. And we selected the 30 European Economic Area countries. So Europe, because, well, this is DrupalCon Europe in the end, but this EEA subset, since theoretically these states commit to using common policies. And this would be useful in perspective to cross this data with other data. So there is no politics behind this choice, but merely the opportunity to enrich data in an easier way. And we will see that actually in hindsight, this was an unnecessary precaution, since actually we could have chosen any country, since everything will be country-based rather than Europe-based. Well, if you want the word, it is just one line of Python away. Ask, and I can rerun everything for the entire world given enough time. Tools were okay, just Python standard libraries for scraping. I know that there are probably many PHP people in the audience, and I'm a PHP guy too. But for data science, Python is much easier to use and has readily available libraries. So this is all standard, and the CMS detection algorithm is a quick algorithm that we implemented with a short custom Python script with this provision. Never send more than 4 page requests to each site to avoid excessive traffic. So go there, snoop on the site, but don't be too aggressive on the site. And so we gather only the information we needed. Let's go to the result page. I won't run a poll for this, just give you the results immediately. And the winner is WordPress. Okay, you would have expected this probably. And second, the runner-up was more of a surprise to me. It is Typo3 with 15%, 15.2%. And Drupal is only third, not a distant third, actually. The edge of Typo3 is really, really minimal. But still it is third, the third choice for the detected CMS in our subset. So this is the main results, and let's go and comment on that. Takeaway. Drupal is probably not as popular as one would expect. I mean, that 71% figure is indeed a bit misleading. WordPress is dominant, and it is 1.65 times Drupal, if you see it here. Much more than Drupal. Typo3 is a surprise, but the margin on Drupal is very small, and I assume, and we will justify it in a few minutes, that it is dependent on geography. So the fact that we chose EEA countries affected these results. And then the other takeaway is that basically the 3 contenders you see here are really the top choices, and everything else is on another level. Joomla is a distant fourth with only 5%, which still is not bad for considering that Joomla is still not very used, but there is a less than 1% long tail, which contains really a bit of everything. You will find university websites done with Plone, with SharePoint, with Wix, with Notepad++, with everything you can imagine. Let's dig into the data for things that will be very relevant for the second part. So, what are the most Drupalized countries in Europe? I can open the live chart for this. Okay, here, so that we can explore it a bit. Iceland and Estonia have a very high percentage. This is how many sites are Drupal out of the sites we considered for that countries. But these are smaller countries. And then Italy and Finland and Belgium are the next level with 33% of their entire websites in Drupal. Of course, this is EEA country only, and this is the first time we see the map, so you can immediately see what countries are excluded from this count. Okay. Second thing we can check is what is the dominant CMS by country. This is very interesting. I'll leave it on the slide for a moment, but we can explore this data too. So blue is Drupal, green is WordPress, and the domination you were seeing before is indeed much blurred here, to the point that even Typo 3 manages to be a top CMS in a couple countries. And Slovakia is a surprise, since the most common CMS there is Joomla. So this, compared to the previous numbers we've seen, says a lot about country relevance in this data. Key figures. We've seen it live. Most Drupalized countries are Estonia and Iceland, with a limited number of universities. If you move to the bigger ones, Finland, Belgium, and Italy, with about 1/3 of their websites running Drupal, are the most Drupalized countries. WordPress leads in 15 out of 30, Drupal in 12 out of 30, so it is not that distant, and Typo 3 in 2. And this is there is this local glory for Joomla in Slovakia. So country is a key factor. Why is that? Probably because there's a nationwide higher education management. So they tend to be homogeneous at the country level. There are national vendors. There's imitation. You tend to do the same that worked in a similar context as yours, and country is a factor. WordPress is very popular, but it's the leading CMS only in half of the countries, with Drupal still being a solid contender with a good popularity in many countries, which means it has expansion opportunities. On the contrary, Typo 3 was brilliant in our first figures, but it is extremely popular in a few countries. This means that its opportunity for expansion are rather limited, since it already has, say, market domination in a couple strong nations, actually Germanophone area mostly, in Germany and Austria, and a much lower presence in other countries. This is probably the reason why I, as an Italian, was quite impressed in seeing that Typo 3 was that much used for university websites. The other figure we are checking, now we are moving into Drupal only the Drupal segment, and checking what version is in use. I'll leave this one since it is clear. In this map, each country is colored in a way that represents the average Drupal version used in that country. Well, the Drupal version is a number, right? So it is 7 for Drupal 7, 8 for Drupal 8. We approximate it. We just keep the integer. We don't check the minor version. So for us, a country that has 4 Drupal 7 sites and 1 Drupal 8 site will have an average of 7.2. Just the mean of the Drupal versions. The map here is rather informative, so let's open it in the interactive version. There are countries that are totally on Drupal 7, so they score a perfect 7. There's only one country, Bulgaria, that is on Drupal 9 and scores a perfect 9. Everyone else is in between, but as the color codes are revealing, there are a lot of countries that are still much more on the 7 side than on the 8 side. And many countries indeed are still between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. We can see it better in another chart here, where I just pick the dominant version by country. So here we neglect all other version, and we see what countries are prevalently on Drupal 7, what countries are prevalently on Drupal 8, what are prevalently on Drupal 9. The color code is clear, means 7 is red, orange, 8 is orange, and 9 is green. Actually, red and orange should be swapped since Drupal 8 is losing support earlier than Drupal 7, but here you see it. You see a lot of countries that still have a lot of sites to migrate. In the prevalent, Italy is a big Drupal country, and the prevalent version in Italy is Drupal 7. Same for Belgium, a big Drupal country, but the prevalent version is Drupal 7. This means a lot of market for migrations, of course, but we're analyzing it later. I'll point out that Drupal 9 is dominant only in a few countries with not a lot of Drupal sites. Well, this could be a good sign since this could be new countries that start their Drupal adoption on Drupal 9. But on the other hand, this shows that the rest of Europe still has to embrace Drupal 9. Back to slides. And okay, here are some other key figures. If you want the average across Europe, it's Drupal 0.597. So still between Drupal 7 and 8, but with a lot of Drupal 7. And if you want the numbers, Drupal 7 still beats Drupal 8 with a comfortable margin. Drupal 9 adoption is still very low. The number is not here, but I think it's 26 websites in total. And there are countries, this came as a real surprise to me, where Drupal 6, and I say 6, is still more or same popular as Drupal 9. And that's appalling in a way, but that's what the number says. In this case, I did open the website and just to check the algorithm, because the algorithm was actually meant to return 7 or 8 or 9. And indeed, I mean, there's CCK there and clear traces of a Drupal of the past. On the other hand, we have 253 sites with a reliably identified Drupal version. And in 1 month, more than 100 of them will be outdated, the Drupal 6 and the Drupal 8. And in 1 year, this figure will be 227. So really, I mean, 90% of the Drupal sites we've seen so far will be outdated in 1 year from now. Takeaways is that the market for migration is, of course, very significant. It depends on what they would like to migrate to. And Drupal 7 still has this comfortable leadership after 6 years of Drupal 8 and 1.5 years of Drupal 9. So migration is too hard, probably, or people fail to see why they should migrate. And the people using these old sites are facing decade-old issues that have already been solved years ago by the Drupal community. This is what scares me. They are making their decision based on Drupal of the past. People here will believe that in order to translate a node title, you need to install a dedicated module. They will believe that you can add configuration to a website and lose track of that. They still reason with the Drupal 7 paradigms. So this is also a risk for Drupal reputation, security aside. Then there's also the security angle, if one really wants to take everything into consideration. And this is the survey. Then, how is Drupal used in universities? The good and the bad. What would be good for to expose for the Drupal reputation in the universities? I think the best summary of Drupal reputation in universities is a blog post I found on Pantheon that says Drupal excels at managing complex content ecosystems. This probably matches Drupal's reputation in universities across all universities that I've been able to talk to. They also believe that Drupal is a professional CMS, expected to be more expensive than other solutions. This is not an issue. It is flexible enough to accommodate all needs. This is understood too. And the perception is that it is hard to configure properly and still moderately hard to manage. There is a perception that a WordPress site is easier to manage than a Drupal site. The other angle, how universities influence the Drupal perception. Well, on one side, universities are prestigious use cases. Drupal's name is associated with MIT, Oxford, Cambridge, and other top names. It is easy to use this as a use case. On the other hand, institutional sites have this perception issue that it's very hard to identify them as cool, meaning a student won't be looking with more interest to Drupal because it powers his institution website. Website is associated with boring stuff, and so the Drupal perception might be not the best in this case. On the field, what do we see? Outdated designs, because they are outdated, but not because they are bad, but because they were done years ago. And with the domination of Drupal 7 sites, those Drupal 7 sites were not designed yesterday, of course. And so the responsive versions may have flaws. So the images on the site are not meant to set the mood, to have the role they currently have in websites, but are more a side aspect on the design. There's also an outdated information architecture, since in many current websites, you see reflected the organizational structure of the university. So the menus are arranged by administrative divisions and not by what the visitor needs. And so the information architecture tends to be heavy, boring, huge mega menus. I will not show examples here, but I had some laughs when researching this that require really a lot of cognitive effort from the visitors. But this is so common that you don't need examples. And for the editors, you have dozens of content types in overly complex architecture in general. When the editor needs to create something, is this an event, or is this a main event, or is this a kind of a medium event? And you have a content type for each of them. What are the current strengths of Drupal for the university environment? Well, first is easy site templates. In several ways, you can have a site templates that you can reuse for 10 departments. And this is a major feature of Drupal. Second, everything related to permissions. So fine-grained user permissions, support for editorial workflow, and accessibility aids, still related to users. Then multilingual. The top use cases are in the US or UK, and multilingual there is less of an issue. But for Europe, an excellent multilingual support is a must. And Drupal 9 has really excellent support for this. And then integration with enterprise-grade system, for example, for search. You have lots of content in a university site. And also enticing for a university, it's an open source solution with a strong focus on security. What are the weaknesses? Well, I would say the main weakness is that you don't get a real long-term support concept, and universities are slow. So they will need a long-term support. They will need easier maintenance, meaning that they will like to get to a point where it is only about security updates and not keep updating to recent minor versions. Also, Drupal has become harder to manage on self-hosted infrastructure, which is popular in universities. You need more knowledgeable people, you need more tools available. In the other direction, let's now compare what's forward and backwards in terms of technology, so modern and less modern. On the modern side, Drupal is perfect for university because they need integration with many systems. And you have Composer. You can reuse the entire PHP world. If you want to set up complex deployment pipelines, you have any command line tools. Drush is a fantastic command line tool, and that allow you to do safe deployment, mass deployments even. You can take a decoupled approach and work with mobile applications. And you have caching, very powerful and very good for high traffic sites. What's still a bit backwards? Well, module readiness cannot be taken for granted. I heard many university sites that were disappointed since they relied on rules or organic groups, and a stable Drupal 8 version is not available to date. And content migration, of course, both migration or staticization still require significant work if one starts from Drupal 7. And then some things that the non-expert might find strange, like /node that exposes content that is published on your site, or the taxonomy term pages. They give the idea of a CMS that is not completely under control for very controlled environments. But these are just a few limitations compared to huge advantages in terms of technologies. Now, last part is doing it right. So a very quick case study with actually generic reflections on how it can work for universities across Europe. This will be valid for every university in Europe. University websites are getting simpler, not more complex. The primary personas are no longer the university staff and faculty, so it is not longer a self-satisfying site for yourself, but it is a site for external users, citizens, and prospective students. And the main focus is communication rather than institutional information. You should see it more as a news website rather than an institutional website itself. And you need to attract visitors. We're in a period where the website may well be the only way left to universities to attract and engage prospective students. On-site visits are harder. Traveling is harder, is still harder in this period in Italy. In getting normal, but still hard. And a university website must be attractive to young people. So you can't really assume that people will try to find their way in 100 items in your menu. They need to immediately find what they need. What can be an answer? Well, here we move to the case study of reworking the University of Parma website with a bad rejuvenation attempt dating to idea. It remained just an idea. Started in late 2019. The initial idea was, well, we will just do a minor refresh. will stay on Drupal 7, just build a new theme for it, and minor information architecture revisions, but the engine will still be Drupal 7. And then we will decide Drupal 8 or 9 at a later stage with the possibility to switch to another CMS in case. Well, then the pandemic struck, so IT had to refocus and the project was abandoned. But when it is considered again, the entire discussion restarted from scratch with a different evaluation, meaning building on Drupal 7 is a waste of effort and ultimately money, since anyway, a Drupal 7 theme implementation cannot be reused at all in Drupal 8 or 9. So the idea was a long-term plan with the aim to evaluate Drupal 9 and other solutions for an entire new generation of the university websites, meaning more than 100 sites, since there is a website for each course of study and one for each department. It is a medium university, but still there are a lot of websites. What steps were taken and how Drupal 9 enabled this sequence of steps? Well, first, the new design. This was already in the plans. It was created, implemented as static HTML and then minimal PHP. And this could be done, of course, by a separate vendor without any knowledge of Drupal. And even the twig step can be done without any knowledge of Drupal 9, since you don't depend on a specific, on a Drupal specific engine. And the result is CMS neutral, so equally suitable for any choice of CMS, meaning in the meantime, we get the design. The design is the main thing that matters, a really implemented design for some of the stakeholders, for all the non-technical stakeholders. And this allows technical stakeholders to go on with the technical decision. And this way, also, the new information architecture was tested and simplified with easier menus, fewer content types, and it could be live tested thanks again to Drupal 9 by building a Drupal 9 backend only site, so a decoupled approach that exposed content through the new JSON API for consumption by the design template site. So basically, editors had the backend on Drupal 9, but still we exposed content in JSON and we modified the design template to be able to consume this JSON content, so that there was an intermediate step not tying everyone to Drupal, but still this allows editor to test the layout with real content, because placeholders always look nice, but you need the real content too when you test the information architecture. So basically they built the website without having the entire infrastructure needed for the website yet, just to get a feeling of what a Drupal 9 backend would look like. And this was, of course, huge improvement from Drupal 7. And okay, the current site is Drupal 7, of course, and to see what the design would look like with real content. We also had a new approach to integration. In Drupal 7, it is old school. You rely on sharing database table with other applications. And this was entirely redesigned using web services and asking for those web services to be implemented. And the entire ecosystem was reorganized around 4 main websites: a central site, one for courses, one for staff, and one for legal requirements, that share the same base theme and specialized sub-themes. And these 4 sites communicate between them. And again, this is much easier in Drupal 9. They talk to each other through web services. So if you need a reference to stuff in the central website, you can still do it much like if it was a common website, but still you can share information. And they can share a common search. They upload the content to a common search engine. There's also a new role for internal staff, because with Drupal 7, the external vendor, had to limit what internal staff could do, since it is much harder to track what is done. With Drupal 9, with exportable and version configuration, you don't have this risk. So you can give full site control to the internal staff, and this results in a much shorter response time for support tickets, for example. And that's it. This is still a plan. It is still ongoing. So the site is still on Drupal 7, and this is the plan for next year. But the plan is already quite defined for this migration, and I hope we highlighted what Drupal 9 enables us to do that Drupal 7 didn't. Conclusions. Is Drupal the best tool for higher education institutions? Well, it is not necessarily the best tool for everything, but you can surely find places in the ecosystem of any universities where Drupal 9 will be the best tool available on the market, be it the intranet or course catalog or the main website. Also, switching to Drupal 9 is a fantastic opportunity for modernizing the mindset, for embrace new ideas. This holds for both the internal staff and the vendors, and for build something that is really new. Not merely, okay, there is a new version of Drupal, the old version is going to be unsupported, so we should upgrade. What's Drupal's future role for a higher education institution? Well, it is an extremely versatile CMS, able to cover all needs a university has, and it can integrate with other systems a university uses, and you can just keep the existing workflows, the tested workflows. It doesn't need to take over everything. It is safe and modern, and in the end, it is surely an option that any university should evaluate, independent on any previous experiences with Drupal 7, because Drupal 9 is a totally different story. That's it. Thanks for watching, actually. And you can get feedback on Twitter, Nuvole Web, and I'll show the contribution opportunity slides and stop sharing the screen and go back to the window. Here, we open the webcam in case there are quick questions. And okay, we are really running out of time, but okay. John, you left out UK. Yeah, that was because it's a current EEA countries, but indeed that can be added. And yeah, headless solutions, indeed, Conrad, maybe an issue. I put a like to questions that I'm answering, and probably with UK included, Drupal would be top, but at least Oxford and Cambridge, yes. And just looking at any other question here. Yeah, I see you really caught some of the takeaways even before I shared them. And that's it. Okay. So I'll just say thank you to everybody who attended the session, and there is the recording. I'll be available through email, andre@nuvole.org, or Twitter, Nuvole Web, Both are on in the slides. You got the link at the beginning of this talk, and we will probably post something to the Drupal.org blog and possibly including UK or with some refinements. So there might be a short post and then a deeper post with the interactive charts and everything that was not in the slides. Thank you for attending, and goodbye. Have a nice continuation of DrupalCon.